Hi, welcome back to Standing Strong for Marriages, a YouTube channel dedicated to helping people walk through marriage separation or divorce using Christian principles.
Essentially, what happens, I think, with everybody at some point in time is they try to figure out what happened. You know, where did we go wrong? Where did I go wrong? Where did they go wrong? What could have been done differently? Kind of like a after action assessment, if you will. Looking at just like I said, what happened? And one thing is, a lot of people will start to do kind of this cultural research. They'll look at society, and they'll start looking at some of the, I guess, conflicts or controversies in the culture. I think there's a lot going on in the West these days about gender roles, what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be feminine, um, how to approach life in terms of money, work, family. Okay, so you have those things. The other thing that I thought has been really interesting is there's this kind of growing online movement. One is red pill thinking, red pill awareness. All this, it's this analogy taken from this sci-fi movie in the late 90s with Keanu Reeves, The Matrix, where basically this character is given this choice. He can either take this red pill and see life as it really is, or he can take this blue pill and kind of live this delusion, this illusion. Uh, in the larger scheme, what these content creators are trying to do is lay life out as they believe is the normal experience versus what maybe the happily ever after thing that you would get from many like rom-coms where things work out, marriage is forever. Maybe they definitely critique religious institutions in the church, and they say, the church is going to push people into marriage and promote it, um, but then is basically unable to really keep people married. If everyone's going to break up and get divorced anyway, then filing the paperwork in the courts and getting the stamp of approval from the religious institutions doesn't seem to really make that big of a difference as far as the long-term outcome. So why do it? So on one end, the one extreme end would be like, don't date, don't have friends of the opposite sex. These are guys. Most of this is guys movement. So just don't date women. Don't get involved with it. There's too much, to lose at work. If someone wants to falsely accuse you, since Reagan passed the no-fault divorce legislation, that your wife can leave you for no reason, and you stand to lose a lot of assets and whatnot, as well as your children. They just look at that and they just kind of say, how risky is this? And some of them are concluding, too risky, I'm out. Okay, so guys are maybe just checking out of relationships. They're checking out um, of work and just like higher goals, higher pursuits, just to kind of do their own thing. The movement is called MGTOW, Men Going Their Own Way. It's an acronym, and it's basically, it's just as it sounds. The guys are going to go do what they want to do in their own way, as opposed to the way that everyone else wants them to behave. So there's a lot of talk and rhetoric about society pushes men to get married because it serves society well. So say, for example, everyone's probably had those parents that they want grandchildren. So when are you going to get married? And then when are you going to have babies? Another example would be the government would say, well, it's good for the economy. One maybe is religion. So religious institutions, if they can get people married early, then think about the switching costs. So these guys say, look, there's all these people out there: the government, the job market, religion, the family. They all get something by guys getting married, but guys are thinking, well, sex tends to die pretty quick after like the first year, once the honeymoon is over, as we always say. So many divorces are happening, largely initiated by women. So they know those stats, and they know financially how the cards kind of fall with the divorce courts, with the family law courts, and they just say they look around. Maybe they watch their parents go through divorces, or they've watched their friends go through divorces, and they just say, "Man, I'm not doing it." So on the other end, you have these guys that are like they're essentially going to try to get as much sex as they can without commitment. They don't want to commit. They don't feel like it's worth it. It's too risky. But I mean, they're guys. They still want to be sexually active. They're not gonna cohabitate. They're definitely not gonna marry. They're definitely not gonna have kids. So it's gonna be condoms, and essentially, it's like the art of seduction. These group of guys, since they're not planning on dating, they're not planning on marrying, they're essentially going to try to emulate everything that they've learned through the years as far as how do you be the guy, like the hookup guy, the guys that women will just, if they're going to sleep with somebody, they're going to sleep with them. So, so imagine this: a group of 10 men and 10 women, most highest quality guy and the highest quality girl. They would date, they would get together and marry. And same with the number two, number three. Why do people get married anyway? I would say three things. One, if you look at what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7, people, they want to be sexually active. They want to do it in a way where, they can do it with someone they trust, with someone they love, with someone that isn't gonna, get them sick. They're not going to get like HPV or HIV or whatever. That basically like in the confines of a exclusive relationship, they're not going to have to worry about all that. Reason number two, a lot of people want to have kids and family, so you're going to need someone else to kind of do that with you. Reason number two for marriage. Number three is life is pretty risky, and I think the idea is that it's a risk reduction tool where even the Proverbs talk about if one was to fall and is alone, no one's there to help him up. But if two go together and one falls, they can help each other out. Married. But what happens to that equation if guys say, you know what, I'm out? So if there is no marriage and you have these 20 individuals, the 10 guys and the 10 women, and now it's just like a free-for-all. Say it's, they even compare it to the natural order of, the way natural selection happens among animals, where the fittest breed and pass on their genes, creating good offspring, and the less attractive or less fit individuals don't. Okay, so in this situation, let's say of the 10 guys, 2 of them are like, I don't know, they have like a high score. I don't know what the score is. Say it's like a combination of intelligence and fitness and earning power. Let's say each area is worth 10 points. The perfect man would score 30 out of 30. So say like of our 10 guys, say 2 of these guys are like 28s. Or say one's a 28 and the other's a 29. These guys are like studs. And basically all 10 women, if they could choose a husband, a suitable spouse, someone to mate with, they would choose one of these 2 guys. Well, these guys aren't confined by marriage any longer. So what's basically going to happen is, say like these guys work their life in such a way where they can sleep with, they basically have like 4 girlfriends or 4 whatever, sexual partners on an ongoing basis. So of the 10 women, 4 would go to the first guy, and then 4 would go to the second guy. So now your situation is you have 8 single guys and 2 single women who are left over. Now maybe there's some sharing and all kind of weird partner stuff, but let's just say, for ease of the example, that everyone's in like that these 4 women stick to their 1 guy each. So then you have 8 women to choose from these 2 guys. Well, probably what's going to happen is essentially some of these guys are going to struggle. They're not going to be able to attract the women that they want to attract. And so then what? Um, because according to the scriptures, I mean, the plan is basically what God has put together is like, if you want to be married, you're going to have one spouse, and that's going to kind of be your go-to for life, you know? In this new scenario, it's like this free-for-all, and if you're like a top tier kind of guy, you're going to have lots and lots of relationships. You're probably not going to stay married, or like you're not going to stay in these relationships for long. You know, like the top guys, they're going to sleep with as many women as possible. The women are going to like want to be with the guys that have the most money, that you know, are the best looking or whatever. You know, not sick, in shape. All the markers that we look for when we select spouses: intelligence, you know, good family backgrounds, job, etc., etc., etc. So in the end, you just have these a lot of people that kind of get left out of the game. So what are those guys going to do? You know, and that's where a lot of these people are saying, well, these guys are just going to check out. You know, they're going to do they're going to do different stuff. They're going to see that they're not really able to all that well sleep with or get into relationships that they want. And so what they have to do is they have to add something. They have to kind of like take their worth, if you will, and come up with some other way to add some value in. Say, well, that extra higher price is going ahead and agreeing to marry and taking on the risks that they're maybe or maybe not aware of. So the risk of future incomes, of future earning, and the potential of kind of loss of status in the culture, in the society. Uh, you know, if their friends and family find out that their spouse leaves them for somebody higher quality, and this is very likely to happen. I mean, this is essentially the larger picture. You know, anytime that someone in this kind of game can either get with someone better, or you know, marry up in the sense of being able to secure more money, or divorce someone in order to secure more money, then they should do it. I mean, it's a kind of a dog eat dog world if you start to get into the head of how this whole thing would play out. And so lots of divorces, and again, then you have these guys that um, you know, they roll the dice and they got married, and maybe it's going to work out for them, and they'll stay married and have kids, and uh, you know, maybe they'll end up in a sexless marriage, or maybe they won't. You know, maybe they'll kind of get the deal that they were looking for, and they'll be able to be sexually intimate with their partners and move forward, make money, raise kids, move into retirement, and not have to go through all this drama. But the stats tell us that that's not what's going to happen for most of these guys. Most of these guys are going to end up being victims of affairs, um, because most of the society is now at a point where there's no problem for, you know, multiple sexual partners. Um, there's a real lack of faith in marriage as an institution. Everyone's well aware of the numbers. So I didn't know that's how everyone was looking at it out there, but very thoughtful, very interesting. Um, Definitely scary, especially if kids are brought into the picture under those circumstances. Um, Here's what I would say. I would say that long term, I think that from what I've seen is that trust is very, very low among the sexes. I mean, people do not trust each other. They've been with, in general, the average person that follows the way of the world, they're going to have many sexual partners by the time they're, you know, mid 20s, late 20s, early 30s, and most people are married around that time anyway, maybe a little bit later. And so, you know, they've had their heart broken, they've been cheated on, they've kind of seen how the game is played, and you know, they're probably, if they put that ring on their finger and sign those papers down at the courthouse, they're probably thinking that, well, I've done this 17 times before, or 12 times before, or 6 times before, I don't know, and it never worked out then. So how is this wedding band and this paper going to save me when it didn't save anybody else for the most part? Maybe it didn't save their parents, or whatnot. I think people would really die to be able to get into a relationship where they felt like they could trust their partner, where they really believed that it was gonna make it the long haul. And I think one thing that I've really noticed is that all these content makers that are talking about this new era of dating and relationships, of how to manage the dangers of divorce, they do not mention ever anything related to Christianity in terms of Christ, the gospel, the Christian community having any solutions or even anything relevant to say. It's never mentioned. It's never brought up. And I think this is ironic. Well, I think it's very telling, and it's a bit sad. Um, but I also think the same is almost ironically true if you go to church and you listen to what's said about marriage and relationships. Basically, what I always tend to hear, for the most part, with not very many exceptions, is A, guys are the problem and they need to step up to the plate, earn more, be better, pray more, be a leader. But there's no conversation of like, yeah, but be a leader. I mean, that flies right in the face of where we are as a culture these days. I mean, um, men in leadership is not, it's not in vogue at all. Uh, in fact, it's quite the opposite. Anyone that's looked a lot into like third wave feminism, I mean, basically the goal of third wavers is to help women secure as much power and dominance as possible. But Christian marriage is definitely not that. And the thing is, when you go to church, there's no like fluency of what the secular culture is saying. It's basically as if the church is saying, secular people, as bright as they are and as educated as they have nothing to say in the conversation. They have nothing to add. We have the scriptures, and our divorce rates are not quite as bad as theirs, and we're the people of God. And so, open, closed case, like feminism doesn't affect us, divorce rates don't affect us. God's going to heal our children who went through divorce. And good luck trying to find a pastor who's going to say anything definitive about when divorce is allowed and when it's not, because there's so many Christians that have been married, divorced, and then gotten remarried, sometimes under biblical terms, sometimes under not so biblical terms. But pastors aren't going to touch that because, I mean, the mortgage won't allow it. There's enough churches in town where if people don't like what they're hearing, they're just going to pack their bags and move on down the street. So it's a bit weird, It really is. Here's what I want to say thank you. I've talked a lot. I've been looking at this stuff for a while, and it's really been interesting to me, but it's also been quite shocking and eye-opening. Here's what I want to say thank you. I think for anyone who believes, it's not really that you're believing in marriage. It's basically you're betting all your chips on God. That He is who He says He is. He's going to actively, through His Holy Spirit, continue to do the work of sanctification in both you and your spouse. That when He said, what I've put together, let no one separate. When He says things like, the work that I started in you, I'm going to carry it to completion. There's a lot of things that He does in our lives where He is going to keep working in those areas. He's going to keep refining us. He's going to keep maturing us. He's going to keep teaching us. The Holy Spirit is called the Counselor. By standing for your marriage, you're saying something really huge, You are standing in a sense against this kind of whole trend, which, I mean, I can't see any which way that this trend of no marriage and all this other stuff, virtual reality porn, tons of partners, tons of kids out of wedlock, a bunch of frustrated people that can't get married and can't get can't get a date or whatever. I don't think that's going to work well. Um, but as you stand for your spouse, you're saying to the culture, you know what? We believe in something different. We think God has a better plan, and we're gonna put our money on Him. The other thing is everything that I just described, which I would describe as like a big mess. If your spouse has walked out of your marriage, that's what they've walked into. I mean, they're going to take their sexual desires, their desires for companionship, any desires that they have to be, loved and have family and be intimate on a number of different levels. This is the environment that they're walking into. So if you think that you don't have a shot, which I know is a thought that comes all the time, but if you think that you don't have anything to offer your spouse, your covenant bride or your covenant husband, I would really say think again, because that's going to be brutal out there. And I've known guys, that they are some of those top tier guys where they can go out and, they can get a lot of different girls and women want to be with them. And those guys, I mean, they eventually got pretty beat up playing that game. And now they're at the point where they're like, no, I mean, I want to just find one person that I can trust and settle down with. So thanks for loving your spouse. Thanks for keeping the door open so that they can come back at the right time. You're making that all possible. So thank you so much. I appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.